Namaskar. Welcome to the Saraswati Sangam Project panel discussion series. Today's panel is discussing the topic of Hinduphobia. The topic of our panel on Hinduphobia. And we had a very nice presentation given by Ankita. Ankita is doing natural language processing analysis around Hinduphobia. There is much need for that in understanding what goes around and then comes around to hurt us today and in years to come. So understanding the entire spectrum of what's going on, of course, coming from a very strong data analytics capability to a very sort of a wisdom-oriented understanding of a circumspect view of what are we dealing with here? What is real? What is imagined? What is constructed with what motive? Is basically what we want to try to develop some insight in this group with different perspectives as we saw. So I'm going to start off with the first question, obviously. What is Hinduphobia, and does it really exist? Is it something real, or are we sitting here and imagining about this word? So let me request Rudranathji to weigh in on what do you think is this? What is this thing that's being called Hinduphobia, and does it exist?
So to answer that question, yes, absolutely it exists, and it has existed for a very long time. If you go back in history, possibly from the beginning of the Abrahamic religions, and the reason are manifold, but fundamentally it represents, Hindus represent a worldview that is completely opposed to what is the Abrahamic worldview, which is black and white, good and evil, binary, duality. So this is the reason why all Abrahamic religions have attempted at some point or the other to denigrate this kind of thought process. The only reason, for example, why Greek civilization is held in high esteem is because they converted wholesale to an orthodox form of Christianity, which again is binary. If you look at the destruction that was wrought in Greece by the neo-Christians of that time, 2000 years ago, as well illustrated in Catherine Nixie's book, which is a must-read, it rivals and even exceeds what the Muslim marauders did in various parts of India. Till essentially Greece came to heal, and became a binary society. So that's the root cause. How does it manifest itself now? Because right now you can't really be burning up libraries and blowing up murtis, although certain communities still do that. How does it manifest itself? It manifests itself in the denigration of mores that we hold dear. It manifests itself in the denigration of societal structure that has evolved over many millennia. For example, our system of having trade guilds, as in jatis, is transmogrified into a sort of a essence of Hinduism that has to be eradicated because it is so backward. Just one example, and it is currently in the West the only, since Sanatana is not a religion, it is the only philosophy that is able to be criticized without fear of repercussion.
Mm-hmm.
So you can go ahead and criticize and pass laws against us, and nothing really does happen to you. And it's, so yes, in Hindus in particular have, through their hard work, through their ingrained sense of their own mental greatness, have succeeded in many, many, many spheres of life. And in but when it comes to decision making capacity, when it comes to making policy, you will find them either to be well subsumed into the Western structure or not available to be asked at all. So,
Yeah, so I was saying that the key point that jumped out was, again, in the presence or absence of binaries, and whether binaries are the better frame versus not. And of course, that's a key difference. And of course, that is to be debated. That can itself be debated. And so that being the basis, Vishalji, I'd like to pose the same question to you and hear your perspective. Uh, is Hinduphobia imagined or is it real?
Well, for me, definitely yes. It is. It is real. It's not imagined. The way I'll say the environment is built around us, and to what Rudaji also said, uh, you know, it is something which is going to I think hurt us in the long term as well if we collectively do not come together. uh, the biggest, I think, disadvantage today for us is, again, I could be a bit off track here, but I definitely have quite a lot of sentiments towards it, is that we are not Hindus are not together in this, I'll say, in this field. We tend to be divided, and that's how we tend to live. Or maybe we like being divided because, for whatever reasons, maybe on caste. I think that's one biggest thing. But that's what is, taking us down in terms of when we look at the global world. When you look at Christianity, yes, there might be divisions, but they are together. When you look at, Islamic, countries, they're all together when it comes to a social cause. But for us, we are divided, and I think that's where we are being taken advantage of, in the sense that anything and everything that we do gets termed as Hindu phobia. And I think there's a very strong narrative that is being run by, I think it's even more so supported by the Western, media, where they keep on talking about anything and everything that we do for our betterment turns out to be as Hindu phobia. So, in a nutshell, yes, it's a reality, but I think there has to be a lot that we have to do in order to counter that. And I think the current uh, government back in India is at least trying to get back at it in terms of calling spade a spade, and trying to ensure that this does not you know continue in the long term.
Absolutely. So I think, again, you referred to lack of unity, and that was actually a panel discussion topic from the last round, and that connecting with this whole problem with caste concept and how that has been fitted in a binary, again, way onto us, and basically corrupting our Varna Jati Kul system, which was a very robust social structure system. And this is something, again, goes back to the original comments we had about us reading about our own systems and understanding what's for what, and then creating that as a basis to counter the divide policies that we have suffered and still suffering from. So we have noted a few things about how we differ, and then the basis for this generation of Hindu phobia. I want to peek in a bit and ask, is there something specific about Hinduism and Hindu practices that is worthy of phobia? So Yogesh ji, let me pose this question to you: is in your experience of being a Hindu and engaging with Hinduism and Hindu communities, has anything jumped up in saying, okay, this is something people should be afraid of, let's do Hinduphobia on that ground?
I think the answer is not a simple, straightforward one. It's nuanced. Rudranathji talked about how the first wave of Christian conversion happened, and it almost annihilated whatever else was existing at that time, starting with the crucible of knowledge of Greek civilization at that point of time. But politically speaking, they also finished Rome. So a question I always keep thinking about, I'm just taking a little aside comment before coming to your point, but why why is Vatican City based in Rome? I think this is a political history. It simply is, in my opinion, to tell the world Rome is finished. All of us are Christian, Catholic to begin with, back in second, third century when finally Rome collapsed. And hence, Vatican City is the seat of the power, and they control the Europe for next millennia. They played politics with every single royal family across the entire continent. As an extension of that, when those countries started venturing out post Renaissance period into the Industrial Revolution, they carried that legacy into the rest of the world. They started looking existing civilizations in the same with the same lens as they thought of Romans and the Greeks back in days. So everybody who was not Christian in Europe, if we know this, was termed pagan. And they suddenly found, well, Hindus in India seem to be very similar to pagans, right? Uh, so they termed us. So hence they put it that as an objective, missionary objective to convert. And if you are not converting, that is the beginning of sort of a leading towards what is now in the 21st century we are seeing as Hinduphobia. And in parallel, of course, there's this story of the entire thing which came out of Arab and what it did to the history and the psyche of the society and everything. The problem is there is nothing structurally which, as a concept which is there, which anybody should be afraid of from Hindus or Sanatanis, which leads to Hinduphobia. The problem is within us. Of course, over a period of centuries, certain things went awry, things practice on the ground changed. So even if we know that caste system is not really the caste system, it's socio-economic structure for the division of labor, which was also true in pre-industrial, even into early days of industrial era of Europe, where you used to have the guilds, right? Why do we have tailors and goldsmith and smiths and all those surnames? It is all coming from those days, right? But they were able to sort of roll it over, but then and assign the convert it to caste system from India when the Portuguese came. Of course, we all know caste is a more a Portuguese term and not really Indian term. So it's a question of translating certain Indian words into fitting into European languages, right? So caste, jati or born becoming caste, or religion, dharma becoming religion, which is really not true. Dharma means completely different thing than what religion means in English. So yes, coming fast forward to it today, I mean, we look at why did Swami Vivekananda have to address in that Word of Religion Congress the way he did in 1893? What was happening when the initial independent sort of Indians started coming on their own outside of India? If you look back the history of US at the turn of 20th century, early 1900, even after Vivekananda's visit, talking about Hindu as what is Hinduism really? What was the coverage, and that is more not political but social coverage of Indians landing in, say, San Francisco? If you find, and you will find it in some archives, the newspaper coverage of the time, They say, well, Hindus have come and they will simply make it dirty and whatnot. But are Hindus really dirty? And then fast forward to today, Hinduphobia has taken an entirely new dimension, because ultimately, as political, this is coming more from a political side, India got freedom. And they, onslaughts of 1,000 years did not really annihilate Sanatanis completely. So there is this fear that if India actually recognizes its true potential, it's going to challenge politically the established power structure in the world. Now, which we have started seeing it happening in last few years more aggressively. So then those who are afraid of India or Indians taking the well-deserved place in the structure, world structure, they are going to continue to add fuel to that Hinduphobia. Now, problem is we ourselves are not able to, fight it with the true reasons. Caste system is not a topic we should be shying away from, because unfortunately we will have to fight it out. We'll have to educate the world. I'm just taking that as an example. Otherwise, we continue to be, the jokes going on Indians Mars mission, right? All of us must have seen that cartoon about 2014 when it came, and India's outside of the space club and with a cow, right? And today that person is sitting inside, and the Europeans or Americans are standing outside. That is the cartoon latest update I saw yesterday morning. Again, it is to fight for the right reason. Otherwise, we continue to be a Maharaja, as Air India image has been. I'm not saying much negative about it, but I think, well, it was really trying to be submissive to the rest of the world. I want to show our hospitality culture, but unfortunately, Maharaja is not our society, or snake charmers. And then that's getting stereotyped in popular Hollywood movies, right? The things like Indiana Jones, or back then, whatever else it was, to Slumdog Millionaire. The world outside knows only what they see. Almost 90% of the non-Indian outside is making an impression about the country using those popular communication channels. And they think India is like Slumdog Millionaire. Everywhere there's a slum. Or Indians are like Indiana Jones, that temple priest and whatnot. How many Indians are really engaging with when they get into an opportunity to talk about? So yes, there is a structural part, and the worry is with the advancement into the technology, into AI and everything. We all know what is the fallout on the gaps in the AI structure, the ethical part of it. And as the study says, the social media, some of those studies have been done by some universities, if some of you have followed through, that there is a structural, systematic Hinduphobia, which is now coming out of social media. Again, it may be one study only at this point of time, but to wrap it up, that it does exist, and systematically it's getting further compounded through the use of the technology. And if we do not get alert about the danger, the next generation will have even a tougher battle than us.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think some of the points were reiterated in the fact that the difference in philosophy of how Hinduism is built around versus the binaries, and then the narrative being built around control. And then, of course, maybe there is a little element of xenophobia as well in it, given that we are not sharing and making people aware of what we really are about. And you gave Vivekanand ji's speech in Chicago, but that's now really dated. How many Vivekanandaji speeches have happened since?
Did you know that the World Conference of Religion, the latest one, was taking place last month in Chicago again? I I I just I found out about it, but from that Kohuna update, the whatever that, they're
Yeah,
doing some
yeah.
good job, of course. Yeah, so
Mhm.
we do not ourselves follow what's happening, to be very honest.
So a lot more need for activism. Rahulji, do you have any more insight to offer for anything within us besides, of course, not speaking up, not knowing enough, and not having the right forums? Anything that about Hinduism that you think people should be fearful of?
Uh, uh, no, look, I would, I'm going to take that slightly tangentially, because I think in any religion with the history and the depth and the width that there will be some things that work well and some things that have got corrupted over time, as Yogesh was saying. It's like there are some things that are not good that have got corrupted over time. That's not our issue. I want to talk about the term phobia, because we are, yes, all the symptoms that everyone has described are there. I agree with all of that. All of those symptoms are happening. I think we need to put some nuance around the word phobia. Part of it is phobia. Part of it is, as people have described, it's structural, and it is being done with malafide intentions. There are people who are like, oh, look, these are the bad guys, and that helps them for their objectives, whatever those objectives might be. But then there is a part of that spectrum which is just ignorance. And if you look at today and the general population that we are living in within, uh, there's a lot of ignorance, and that ignorance is, we need to, I think, urgently deal with the vacuum that we seem to leave always in that narrative. So if you look at a person who is, you know, living in suburbia and going about their life in the, I'm talking about not in India but in the Western world, and someone comes up and says, social media is all about attract clicks and so on, and someone comes up with a dramatized version of something unusual that happens in India that they have never heard of. Yes, obviously they will take that, and that will become their perception about Hinduism and about that country. We need to not leave that vacuum. I think that's really important, that we don't have uh, any voices. We don't have content putting out. I mean, you've got the Indiana Jones movies. Where's the counter culture? Where's the counterpoint that our film industry is putting out? Where are the articles that our people are putting? If you look at most articles that are on this topic, people take extreme positions on one end of the spectrum or another. Which, I mean, I've been in sort of mass communication adjacent fields all my life, and when you do that, you are either talking to your own echo chamber, where people who agree with you will agree with you and be all great, and people who don't agree with you will completely turn you off, even if the current social media, etc., algorithms even get your message to them, or let your message get to them, but they will tune you out. They will not listen to you. And I think there is a desperate need for a middle of the road voice to start putting what we are discussing about the caste system, for example. Where's the voice that explains what the caste system is? I haven't seen that. So for a person who's like, oh, this is what India does, or this is what happens in Hinduism, you get into a caste, you never get out of it, and then you're oppressed, and this and that. Yeah, obviously that sticks in their mind. But where have we put the counterpoint to that? I think that's a critical need, and it may come from, I think, our way of being. We are, I think most Indians are on the quieter side. At least that's my perception, that we don't get out there and fight those narratives. And it's not just on Hinduism. I mean, something that I don't know, Aparna, if you were part of this conversation, is when the whole Kashmir Article 370 thing happened,
Mm-hmm.
There was such a woeful lack of PR from the Indian government and from the Indian Foreign Service, that whatever narratives were out there were just out there. And I happened to talk to someone who was in the Foreign Service, Yogesh, Aparna, you know him, and he was basically saying he was in New York at the time, and he was saying that there is no budget to do PR, and we don't know how to push back against this, and that is where I think there is a need to realize the value of communication. When we say Hinduphobia is real and this is happening, what are we doing about it? And where's the sort of, not just the strategy of pushing back against it, but where's the money behind it, where's the effort behind it, and where's the coordinated sort of, this is how we push back.
I have a question here for the panelist. Excuse me if I go off track here, but my question is, where did the word Hinduphobia come from? We keep talking about Western world and others, but to me it looks like that we are the ones who created this word Hinduphobia word within our own country, wherein the Western world just picked up on that. It gave food to the Islamist nations as well, or to the radicals to talk about Hinduphobia. But I believe it is us who created that terminology. Like a decade or two back, it was saffron terror. Everybody picked up on that. Now it is Hinduphobia, but we are the ones who are, I'll say, creating these terminologies which go against us. And to your point, Rahul, then we are not able to counter it on a larger platform. Is it budget? Is it not the will? Or is it that let it happen, it'll die out, its own death? But I think we are the ones who coin these terms in our own country and then put it onto the Western world when they pick it up. But to your point, again, yes, communication is very important. And I see that Georgia State did pass a resolution where they condemned Hinduphobia, and they said that that terminology cannot be used in that part of the world. But I think that's where we all have to come together to ensure that we are doing it. But I always get bogged down with this. Where did that word come from?
Absolutely, Vishalji. So when you say we, I would want to parse that reference as well, because we is again not a homogeneous we. Right. So I'm gonna turn this. What I'm trying to do is really pull it apart in terms of what it is. What is this beast that we are dealing with? And of course, we'll flip it to a little bit more responsive and positive spin. But in terms of understanding it, the last element I really want to get a sense for is more contemporaneous political and geopolitical motivations behind pushing this word forward, or what's happening behind it forward. So Ravindraji, can I ask you for some light shed on what is the political story behind Hinduphobia today, or geopolitical significance?
So I'm just saying, like, creation of narrative, like whether we coin a word or they coin a word, that is kind of immaterial. If you look at what happened on the caste thing, they wanted to target our community, our kids, future education, job and all that, and they created a caste bill over here. So if you go back to the saffron terror logic or Hinduphobia, it doesn't matter where it is coming from. In fact, saffron terror came from Congress party, and they are part of like Breaking India forces. So we need to have again, money is definitely one way how we can finance and fund, but the kind of like people in US we need, so who are not afraid where they need to see, we need to rally. Our community has got a lot of gaps. I'm not like putting all the information in very structured way, but there is need for unity. There is a need for like inspiration within our next generation. There's a need for like more cohesive way of like working together in different organization. And we have to go and get the control of the power, and then only we can make difference.
Bonaji, I'll turn over to you. Of course, you're also in the DC ecosystem, and you're also a mother, and so you see issues arising around Hinduphobia and the narratives and the direct implications. I would now try to switch on the response side. So weigh in on what you see and the reason for this push to keep us down, and what do you see as our way to get back and defend ourselves, including the youngsters who are, of course, our future.
Yeah. No, so I will just say that when we were talking of binaries versus our multivariate system that we have in our Sanatani Dharma. So I think that is basically the root of the problem. If you think that all these Abrahamic religions, they are inbuilt, with this proselytizing zeal, they are built, they are designed to promote, to market. And it's very easy to market a binary system, good, evil, hot, cold, blah, 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 make movies, villains and actors. But our system is completely opposite. It's more of a seeker system where individual has to seek out their truth, their own thing. And we are not actually designed for any good marketing. We don't have any inbuilt good marketing skills within Sanatan Dharma. It's a very attractive proposition that we bring to the table. And it's so attractive that people who market their religions are afraid that their marketing will go waste and everybody will go back to the other, side where they, let you be free and you seek. I mean, for all the hoopla that goes around, they're saying, oh, we are for freedom and we are for this and that. They're actually very afraid of the freedom.
Yeah.
Because if they weren't, I mean, you would not see the kind of drama that goes around, trying to prevent people or trying to convert people, or away or take them away from, their natural instincts or their natural way of life or how they want to connect with the environment around them. So I feel that in order to survive and in order to, thrive and bring a large section of population back into that fold, or so to speak, I'm using their terminology, we need to actually also adopt some of these marketing techniques that they have. I mean, we don't have to force anyone, but we need to become better at marketing, organization, our own narrative building. Right now, we just fight narratives. We don't build our own narratives. So I think that's where the problem, that is what we need to work on as Hindus, as Sanatanis.
So I would want to see how many different aspects of this we can drill into. So building narrative and marketing what we have to offer, but then that has many different facets about it. And then, so the war is being fought, if there is a war against Hindus, on various fronts and various channels. And I would really like to go around and have everybody's inputs in how do we defend ourselves, how do we support our youngsters in continuing to build their life in a secure way as a practicing Hindu. Rahulji, I'm going to go with you because you are a marketing expert, and Monaji brought up marketing. So let's start with that.
I think the point that she made about reacting to a narrative versus creating our own narrative is very important. And as we look at the community, as we look at the next generation, it's important to have that narrative out there. How do we do it? The way, as I think about it, I had started talking earlier about being at one end of the spectrum. So what, there's, I think it needs to be a multi-pronged approach. It needs to be an extreme, rebuttal to extreme views. But then there is a need for a lower intensity or a simpler sort of layman's narrative for the people who I like to think that people aren't bad at heart unless we know that they are. The general population, and assume that there's some part of it that is just operating from what they know. There's an education element there, and as we think about providing that education, we need to sort of meet them where they are, in the sense that we need to respond to what they have heard. So, to the point that several people made about the caste system, you talk to a general person in the Western world, what is Hinduism? A lot of them will say it's about, they'll say something about caste system, they'll say something about thousands of gods, and things of that nature. We need to respond to that without going too deep, but just to where they are. Like, this is, why is a pantheon of gods bad? Why is that taken to be bad? And we start that conversation there. So I would say that organizations like this and others, obviously you can't coordinate across the kind of landscape that we are talking about, but I think different organizations need to take a position and say, this is the area of communication that we will develop or support. That would be one way of it. And then to sort of be out there and be prepared to debate, to be prepared to sort of talk about it. Today, if you look at a lot of practicing Hindus, I don't think they'll be able to talk knowledgeably about a lot of the things that people will throw at them. So first, there's the education, our internal education, because a lot of us, it's convenient and the lazy way out to just take whatever you get and not delve too deeply into it, not think too much about it. So I think there's as I'm trying to put these strands together in my head, there is a need for education first within the community, and then there is a need for creating content that can go out there and meet people on different parts of the spectrum. We have the ability to do it. If you look at the country and so if you we're talking about Hinduphobia or whatever nuanced way we choose to describe it, I agree with Vishal that the term sort of doesn't work for me. I agree with all the symptoms that people have described, but calling it Hinduphobia sort of doesn't 100% work for me. So as we think about that, we are talking about the key stakeholder being all the Hindus in the world. Most of them are in India, so that's sort of the framework that I'm coming from. We have the world's largest film industry at our disposal. Why can we not create content that pushes out the narrative into popular culture? There's no reason why we can't. We have 1.5 billion people. We can easily have a social media strategy that sort of that puts that narrative out there. But I think for it to work, it needs to be credible. It needs to be entertaining, but factual and meet people where they are. Those are sort of the things that I would put out there.
Thank you, Rahulji. I'll go around and request everybody's additional inputs on this question, because that is how we would need to end this discussion in a positive note, in an action-oriented note. So, Rudranathji, from your perspective, how do we defend ourselves? How do we support our youth in light of what they may face in whatever we may call under the garb of Hinduphobia?
I think Rahulji's point is very well taken, and he has pointed out a few things that we have to do. I think primary amongst them is educate our own. That is absolutely critical. I mean, I have been self-educating since my miseducation in school and college for the last 30 plus years, and I'm still lacking. So it's a critical importance. So the problem are manifold, and you have to do a root cause analysis to get to where the problems are and how to correct them. So, if you think about it, we as Hindus have been conditioned over centuries to believe that our religion, or religion is a wrong word, but it'll suffice for now, is atavistic, backward looking, and practices that must be reformed. And in many circles, especially in the English-speaking Hindu society, it is almost impossible to get beyond the first layer of discussion about this. So I have kind of given up on that, and I'm really now concentrating on educating our youth. And I think that's where the mind is being formed, and decision-making capacity is being formed, and ability to view the world is being formed, and that's where we should concentrate. But these things take organization and money. I'm not going to go into how deep the causes are and where the causes lie, and because that is a whole discussion on its own terms. But we need to organize around an idea, contribute time and money to it, and create databases, literature, and then propagate it. It is a monumental task. But if you don't start now, it'll be even more monumental later. So we have to start now.
Absolutely. So again, I mean, there is effort in the small and there is effort in the big. Each one of us can do the effort in the small, and of course, in this group, we are trying to do effort in the group under the TSSP umbrella, and the whole mentor program was really created for facilitating that by engaging professionals and experienced professionals like all of you with the young scholars that are in the group. And again, on that same question, turning to you, Mona, what is your sense for an additional comments you may have for beginning to defend and making it better for all of us?
Yeah, I mean, arming our children with, the correct knowledge. Like my kids' history books start with, with a very distorted, timeline of Sanatanis, of Hindus. The term itself is very loaded, and it's used, I mean, first of all, maybe letting our kids understand that we are Sanatanis and Hindus is just a geographical term. And, and then our history, the timeline of our history, which is completely distorted in their history books and what they learn. I mean, the first thing they learn is that Hinduism started with Buddha, and then the second thing is they immediately jump to is the caste system, which is again nothing in indigenous about that. I mean, there's nothing. Caste itself is something that is prevalent in the Western Europe rather than in India. So it's just that, and it's not just a one-time effort to teach them. It's like an ongoing process, because you have to correct these narratives and these events that they see and they hear from time to time, and then tell them that what they are seeing is a Western interpretation of an India, whereas there is, and because we currently don't have any, and unfortunately we've all grown up with Western interpretation of India rather than Indian interpretation of India. It's kind of hard to reset that frame for them every time they observe things about India, or they observe or they read something about India and over here, and it's very important to counter it and to set it in the right frame each and every single time. So that I feel is the most important and exhausting parental responsibility that we have, one of them at least. So, and I think I personally find that having kids go through programs like there's a program called Beautiful Tree by Hindu Parents Network. That's a very, very instructive one, and it runs at all levels, and it gives the correct history timeline of India and our dharma. And I think that those kind of things, and having more and more of that is something that is the need of the hour.
Absolutely, Monaji. I think undoing the conditioning is extremely hard, and at all stages of our lives, and many of us are victims of that, and luckily have found some light and other ways of being enlightened about the reality of our dharma. And then, of course, we get beaten down up with it, right? I mean, even in the context of Chandrayaan, we were being reminded of how we are so backward with caste and whatnot. I mean, just keeps coming at us. Vishalji, from your perspective,
Just one thing I have to say.
Yes,
I mean,
please.
instead of sometimes it's better to hit back. Like I kept reading all these comments about why do we give aid to India, and I liked this is a borrowed comment that somebody said, you know what, let us set up an EMI system where you pay us $1 trillion every year for next 45 years and then we are even. So
Right. Vishalji,
Yep.
your
You know,
positive remarks on how we make it better for us.
so for me, everybody has the hero, and for me, I like Sudhanshu Trivedi. The amount of knowledge that guy has
Yes.
is tremendous. And the way he speaks, articulates it is immense. So for me, knowledge is power, and there's a power that he showcases in debates, and there's a power that we need to shift to our youth. What's
Mm-hmm.
I always we always used to hear that karam kar or phal ki cheshta mat karo. I always believe if you're doing karam, you need to have rewards as well with it. When we work hard in our area, in our fields, we want promotions, we want increments. If we just sit down and say, I'm going to slog my ass off, but hey, I don't expect anything in return, it's a lie. So for me, the narrative has to change. Karam kar or phal ki cheshta bhi karo. You need to do that. You need to have a narrative. And I know we have been talking about, and I was reading some chats as well, Bollywood and other aspects. We can have movies. My thing is, we have resources out over there who can be our spokesperson. When you look at Hollywood, how many of them follow Hinduism? You have Julia Roberts, Hugh Jackman, Angela Jolie, Mark Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs, Will Smith, name them. There are so many of them. But do we ever put them at the forefront to talk about what Hinduism is all about? I think we are more debated, or we worry about as to what we want to communicate, but we have brand ambassadors out over there who we can use slash misuse, in terms of pushing that narrative out over there as to, yes, we are a peaceful religion, but at the same time, if need be, we can pick up arms as well to defend our religion, our culture. But yeah, I'll always say knowledge is power. We need to educate our youth. I think our time has gone, in the sense that for us to go back to the drawing board, we are right there, but the youth has to come up. We need to educate them. We need to provide them resources in terms of what Sanati Dharma is all about. What is right, what is wrong, how they can lead I'll say responsible life, and how they can counter the narratives that are out there. But for them, we need somebody like Sudhanshu Trivedi who can impart that immense knowledge to them, or a resource from where we can do that. I think the world will be a better place, and I don't see Hinduphobia lasting that long. And I think, yeah, to your point, Chandrayaan, we're talking about sending man to moon now. We're talking about going back to Mars. I think this will position India in a very different light across the global world, and the way the leadership has come up in the last 10 years. I think we are at the forefront. We can say we are right wingers. Maybe people will term us as right wingers. I'm like, yes, still it's for positive. I am. I don't have any shame in saying that I'm a right winger, or for even a terminology, Modi. But hey, I'm fine with it till I see my country prosper, till I see my people prosper, till I see that people today talk about India. They look forward to India for leadership, or for technology, as a matter of fact, and for resources, as a matter of fact. So absolutely, yes, knowledge is power. We need to impart that power to our youth.
Absolutely. So I think truth shall prevail, and we all have to be bearers of truth, which again means that we need to educate ourselves and then be bearers of the truth and make everybody aware of what the truth is. Yogeshi, I'm going to invite you to make the final concluding remarks.
But I just want to comment on a couple of things. Being proactive, and I think it's important, absolutely important. Can we publish a paper saying the caste system, what it is all about, it's all about how you do a division of labor in a modern day society, with conflict of interest being completely avoided by doing the distribution. So, a guru is somebody who the kings will bow to take advice from. But sorry, guru, you can't accumulate wealth. You have to live and survive on whatever the society gives to you. And then kings are kings. You are the policymakers, rulers. But sorry, you have to bow down to the guru. You cannot go completely against. And if you do that, we know history is replete with the fact wherever the king has not followed guru's advice, it has resulted in bad outcomes. And then there is a commerce group, Vaishyas. I mean, you are supposed to do all the economic activities. And then there is a labor class. What is so different from modern day economic structure of corporations and any society? No different, but in that system, inherent was the avoidance of conflict of interest. So can we publish a paper? Yes, let's do that. I mean, I know it is going to be sort of full with explosive reactions to come from all over. We need to be open to get that onslaught. But I think that's an important piece.
Yogesh, thanks for the permission. The king had power but no ability on spiritual matters. The economy was run by Vaishyas and was not run by the kings. And the people who ran the economy had no power over laws and had no power over spirituality, and nobody could work without the labor class. So everybody had their space and nobody could work without the other, which is, if you look at the American system, it is a tripartite system with three independent branches of government. But the Indian system was far superior with four independent branches, and nobody could interfere with the functioning of the other. So I explained that to my son. He's grown up in this US system. He's still learning a little bit, but I think your point is extremely well taken, and this needs to be elaborated. That's all I wanted to say.
So,
Absolutely.
a paper is in the order.
Yes, and
your point has been validated.
I mean, you are in that industry. I am in that industry where we see on a daily basis what really it means to have a conflict of interest situation to be avoided. How much effort organizations put in to ensure that that just doesn't happen. And what is the reason? It's exactly the same reason. So in that you can think of getting it spiraled over into political circles. Why do we have the three different branches of executives, judiciary in US, but in India actually we have four? And I was explaining this to somebody, I'm just sort of transgressing on that, to a American neighbor a few years back, before or around 2019 election. Why is the Indian election looking so different to me than a US election where a governor of a state is also the presiding officer for the election activity? Sorry. And you yourself happen to be a candidate too. Here is right there on your face a conflict of interest situation, because you can manipulate the voters list. That's what was happening back in 2018 in Georgia. So anyway, that's a side comment. But I think, coming back to the point where we need to set the narrative, we have to be creating body of work exactly to this point and, do it. The next point was, I think we still are very shy. Our generation, up to our generation, the next generation seems to be doing far better. Although I will say that their opinions are more extreme on both sides. So which is probably more a reflection of the opinion making policy or process in the society in general. But at least they are more aware. We were growing up and we hardly ever talked about any of those topics, even maybe a generation down the street. But now people are at least a little more aware of it. And the battle for India and the Hinduphobia, whatever it is happening in India, is probably let's leave that on the Indian geographical thing. but is also equally important outside India, and especially English-speaking countries, maybe, or European countries. So US, of course, becomes a prime hotspot for that. Indians should get, and this is an extreme opinion I am having for since I moved over to US few years back. Indians need to get into the political circles. They need to not be shying away from becoming politically involved in elect, becoming a candidate for positions, state, city, national level, whatever. And I think this year's the campaign for the presidential election is showing some interesting faces, irrespective of whether I like them or do not like them, whether they toe our line or their thinking is in agreement with our approach. They are there, and that is only helping us, and we need to have more. And with the Indians which are there in the otherwise in the corporate world doing also good or otherwise in other spheres of life, there's no reason why Indians should not be politically more active. Seeks positions, public positions, really, because that's going to help in the long run. The last point is sort of all these other things, and the India's economic story is simply helping. We must keep leveraging that as much as possible, because the stories about India being land of snake charmers or whatnot, those stories need to be reduced in terms of their importance. Instead, the economic story should be told more aggressively, whether it is about our space program, whether it is about the women leadership in the ISRO. It's such a subtle point compared to any other scientific establishment across the globe. How much is there? Or other things happening in India, the railway network and whatnot. These are all helping, and that is where we should be looking at. While to Rahul's point, we need to go where they stand, or the outsiders stand, and talk to them from that point. But we also need to subtly move them to more important success stories, positive stories. Opinion will help in addressing a lot of the phobia type of the things that India means serious business.
And I think, Yogeji, to your point, I think we have come a long way from being a land of snake charmers. I think we are a technology hub now. To your point, and we are a growing economy. I think the world has seen India evolving, and we are there now on the doorsteps. As the current dispensation says, we could be the third largest economy in the next 4 to 5 years. So I think we have moved a long way from being a land of snake charmers or a land of kings and princesses, prince and all the stuff. But I think we are a power to reckon with in the world now, with India having the Gen Y or Gen Z, whatever you may call it, as the youngest population, and world over you have aging population. So I think time is there for us. It's just that how we communicate that narrative to the world that we are on the stage now, and it's time for India to rule. Hinduphobia or no Hinduphobia, we will be there.
Yeah.
Excellent. So let me open up mentees to weigh in or ask questions. Shreya, Sanjana, Ankita, anything you want to comment? Ankita, of course, you have done actual research on Twitter data on Hinduphobia, and any comments, questions, points that you want to bring up?
Yes, it was, first of all, it was definitely a pleasure listening to everybody. I would say that I completely agree with Hindus that Hindus' will to, enter the battlefield is very important, and, also sometimes confront the opposition, the enemy, with their own, using their own weapons in a way. So that's why I agree with the getting more active on the political stage and the debate stage. All that I feel is very important. And sometimes, even though we are very convinced, we know exactly what it is, what our civilization means, all that, to convince the other side about it, we might need to, start using their language, using their way of methods, at least get at least knowledge on how to use them. And then once we've beaten them on that stage, we can then bring them also on our side, and then our way goes. That's how I feel, at least. But yeah, it was very interesting, very enlightening conversation. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, Ankita. Shreya and anybody else, I mean, आप सब हिंदी में पूछ सकते हैं अगर आपको हिंदी में प्रश्न पूछना है. Many of us are very, very conversant in Hindi as well.
So, I just wanted to echo what Ankita was saying. I think it was a very interesting discussion for me too. I really appreciated the diversified views that we had, and I think the question of is there something to be scared of Hinduism was interesting. I was looking forward to the answers to see on that, but I like that we all mostly agree on actions to be taken, and creating our own narrative is very important to and so yeah, just wanted to say thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Sanjana. I would reiterate and also commending you that we all need to read and we all need to learn, and then we all need to speak up in every single forum, either using the sophisticated data analytics that Ankita is using, or otherwise, whatever tools are available, we need to not be shy anymore because we have great gems to share with the world. And then the only way to do that is to make them available through our own understanding of them. So let me wrap up this session. Thank you, everybody, to have made the time on a Saturday morning where I'm sure you had other things you could have done. Thank you so much for tuning in. We greatly appreciate your support of our efforts. Thank you.